Dig Deep podcast number. I always forget the number. Is it 26, I think? But round 2 for Mr. Josh Stevens. I think you are the first guest of the podcast, so
I think I was.
extra special.
I think I was.
The OG.
I was your first.
Oh.
All right. I think we're good. Can you hear?
I can.
Josh? Awesome. Joshua Stevens. Buddy.
Good to
Thank
see
you for coming back.
Thanks, man. Thanks for having me.
It's been a while.
Hot minute.
Yeah. So you're now living in Estes Park. Did you drive all the way from Estes
I
today?
did.
Yeah.
I did. Yeah.
How long does it take you to come to, for people who are, not from the area, how
Sure.
long of a drive is it?
In good weather, about 45 minutes down into the valley.
Yeah. Big year for you. A lot of running. We're going to talk about that. And we're also going to talk about 2018, okay? But first, let's talk about the important stuff. Music, man. Like, is because you are big into music, have good taste. I like that. I like your style. And before we started recording, I was telling you, is there a particular song or band that you are obsessed with right now? The reason why I say this, it's so selfish. I'm like crazy obsessed with Alice in Chains Unplugged right now.
Amazing.
So
Amazing.
this is a bold statement I'm gonna say right now, but in my opinion, is the best MTV Unplugged ever. And for me, it used to be Nirvana.
Yeah.
But do you have any thoughts on that
I think
very deep topic?
No, that's an actually extraordinary point because I think, that's right in my wheelhouse in terms of, a few minutes ago back in the 90s when I was in my early 20s.
Yeah.
It was a really profoundly popular format on MTV.
Yeah.
At the time, and really kind of the last vestiges back to when it was a music-based television station.
Totally.
I think I don't know if I could come up with kind of a linear order ranking of my favorites. I would say that is definitely one of my all-time favorites. It's also a little bit sad. Elaine Staley was in a very bad spot.
It
in
is
that, right? I mean, he doesn't look good.
Well, interesting that you said that because I was reading an article where what's the other guy's name? I can never remember.
Oh, it's Jerry Cantrell.
Jerry Cantrell. He said that when before the show started, they were not 100%. Like I think Jerry Cantrell had a stomachache, or he was under the weather, and of course, Lane Staley was not doing well. But they just pulled the most amazing, and they even said like they just pulled the most amazing show they probably ever made. And you're right, it's sad. It's like I think about concerts that I'll never ever be able to go to, and Alice in Chains, okay, they have a new singer, but in my opinion,
it's not the same.
No, it's not the same. It's just terrible. But that's a different topic. Beastie Boys, for instance, you know how much I love Beastie Boys, and now with MCA gone, you're never gonna be able to see them. So so anyway,
no, I think it's important, and I think it drives a lot of the ways that we spend our time and use our leisure time. I don't ever miss an opportunity if they come through town to see Foo Fighters. My girlfriend and I get to
totally
because Dave Grohl represents a time period that you can't replicate because of the loss of people like Lane Staley and Kurt Cobain and those folks. So, but I would say that my favorite 3 MTV Unplugged.
Okay.
Nirvana.
Okay.
Alice in Chains and 10,000 Maniacs. Those are my 3 favorites.
I love Natalie Merchant. I think I like her more. I didn't get to listen to 10,000 Maniacs that much. I when I started listening to them, it was more with Natalie Merchant, which is funny because my wife Amy, she hates her, and we can never play that music, I guess, loud at home. But great voice. And Unplugged's not around anymore, right?
No. I mean, who knows if they'll ever bring it back?
Yeah, MTV's not the same, man.
Everything changes, right? I realize
you're so
now,
much better than me. Like I'm like, MTV's not the same.
Well, I try desperately to avoid becoming that prototypical, aging white dude, baby boomer that annoys me so much, and now I'm the aging white Gen X guy.
Hey, me too.
And I don't want to sit on my porch and yell at new bands as they run by, like, you guys aren't as good as it used to be. It changed.
Yeah, that's true.
That's how it is.
You're much better than me like that. Okay, so let's talk about running, I guess, because
sure.
And no, I'm just kidding. So. We're going to talk about this year, which you have big races ahead of you for the year, and also you've already done a couple. It's the year of Badwater, it looks like.
It is.
But let's, before we talk about this year, why don't we talk about 2018? A quick review of your year. And of course, we'd love to talk a lot about, spend some time talking about your 24-hour treadmill challenge. For people who are not aware of what you did, when was that?
It was actually December 2017.
Oh, dude, really?
Yeah.
Huh. Talk about what that was, what inspired you to do it, and how did that go?
Yeah, it was inspired, I suppose. It was the second iteration of a treadmill challenge that I had done. Roughly a year preceding that, in November of 2016, I guess, I had done 100 miles on the treadmill in a little over 18 hours. And that was part of the Herren Project. And at the time, overseeing sort of the derivative portion of the running ambassador program for Herren Project was the ultra running group, and Dave Clark had gotten me into that. So fast forward about a year later, I had thought that I could do it on a bigger scale in terms of my participation and to raise awareness, to garner some attention and some fundraising for Herren Project. And you were around at the time. We thought that doing it at Boulder Running Company on a weekend, keeping the shop open for the entirety of the time, and then inviting in a number of guests from the running community. And then we would use our relationships with folks like you and other multimedia platforms in the social media world. And so December 2017, we set out and ran for 24 hours on the treadmill.
So what was how many miles did you end up running on 24?
121 and change.
And I was listening to the podcast, your podcast with Sage, and when you talk about drinking that the non-vegan
Orgain,
that made you go, made you take a, because we're vegan, so you had like a non-vegan shake, and that upset your stomach, I think, a little.
There were a successive number of bathroom breaks for a couple hour period. Yeah, it was not the most productive portion of the 24 hours.
Hey, but it was great. It was great to see. Not that, but I'm just kidding. Like, it was great to see a lot of buzz, excitement around your event. A lot of people who know you didn't know you stop by to encourage you. I remember seeing, I think I saw Dave Clark, and big names as well. Of, Kerry Goucher stopped by, Scott Jurek, I think, stopped by.
Yeah,
as
Scott
well.
Jurek, Noah Drody, Sage and Sandy. I mean, a lot of really well-known folks in the running community, and then, the entire spectrum of folks who just thought it was an interesting concept and they want to come in and see it. And then friends and folks who just are only lightly interested in running.
Yeah,
so it was neat. It was a really rewarding experience.
So when it's a 200-mile treadmill challenge.
I don't know that 200.
No pressure.
Yeah, I've got some pretty ambitious goals that I think when the time is right that I would like to go after. I don't know necessarily that going after my goal. There are things I'd like to challenge myself with, and I don't have a large series of skill sets, but running repetitively on a spinning belt is something I do okay at.
This is that's interesting that you say that, because again, watching or listening this on Sage's podcast, you talked about the kind of, I guess, surfaces or types of terrain that work, I guess, the best for you. And correct me if I'm wrong, I think you said that a non very technical terrain works probably a little better.
Well,
than
I'm recalling that conversation. Generally, I think I broke it into like a binary. There's either mountain running or flat running.
I see.
And we all know it's not that simplistic.
Yeah.
There's large variations. From a performance perspective, I think my strong suit is on controlled terrain, whether that's pavement.
I like how, yes, you're saying that control terrain.
Yeah, Forest Service roads, buffed out single track, and flat and rolling. Those are the areas I do well. I climb relatively well, and I'm okay at it. I'm better at climbing on, just the grinders,
Right.
the grinding stuff. Whereas I would classify folks like, Hillary Allen or
Darcy.
Peter Maximo. Yeah, some of these folks that are more sky running oriented.
Oh, I see.
To me, that's a different skill set altogether.
Yeah.
And I'm adequate at that. I'm definitely more competitive on the stuff that I do principally.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting because I like to run on that kind of surfaces as well. Like I go running on the Switzerland Trail, for instance, and I like it.
Sure.
One time I told a friend I went on a run there and was like, that is so boring. Or I personally enjoy running on the Boulder Reservoir area.
Yeah.
Not where the rest is, but like, there's all kinds of, and I know.
Eagle Trail.
Yeah, exactly.
That's a lovely place.
It's one of my favorite places
Yeah.
in town, and I know that that terrain is not challenging at all, but I had a great time doing the Silver Rush in Leadville, or
Nice.
so yeah, it's fun. So okay, 24 hours on the treadmill. Remind me what other races you did in 2018,
2018.
or how was 2018?
Yeah. It was in February of 2018. I ran Rocky Raccoon 50.
Oh yeah.
And that was the second time I'd run that race. And then I ran in April. It's kind of a local race, but it's really one of my favorites, and that was the 24 hours, the Lake Palmer 24-hour death race / fun run. That is in Lake Palmer, and that was I ran for 24 hours up there. Then
Is that like a 2-mile loop?
It's 0.82 miles
yeah,
of dirt loop around a lake, and it's 7,500 feet, and we didn't have ideal weather, so it was a great run. There were lots of cool folks, and one of the best distance runners in our field, my buddy Pete Kostelnik, came out and he ran that race as well. So it was Kevin Hadfield, a bunch of good dudes that I know were there, and it's a really laid back vibe. So yeah, I would recommend anyone with a good chance.
That sounds fun to me, for real.
It is.
Like
It is, man.
Running 24 hours in a almost 1 mile loop.
Yeah.
Dude, it's. I know it, for most people would be like, this is monotonous, awful, but
No, that's right in my wheelhouse. I love that, but it's because I'm simple-minded.
Yeah,
It doesn't take much to distract me.
Yeah, exactly. It's just exactly simple. Okay, so you did that one,
Yes.
Rocky,
and then and then I ran what's been one of my all-time favorite races, the Kodiak 100 down in Big Bear Lake, California.
Got it. And how'd that go?
I had a great time. I ended up, doing well enough to make some money and being in top 5 men.
Nice.
And running a course that isn't ideally suited to my strong suits, and still tacking on 3 bonus miles. I mean, I learned a lot. It was a
3 bonus miles.
I got a host of life lessons in that.
Is
run.
that because you got lost, or because the course is longer than 100?
Well, it is. It's already longer than 100. It's 102 and change. I turned it into 105 and change. So there are two waves that go out. There's the main body that departs at 8, and then there's a prize purse category that starts at noon. And logistically, there's a couple of small changes they make in the aid stations between those two shifts. I went out in the prize purse category at noon and maybe got a little froggy going out and missed the turn and went out a ways, then came back and rediscovered the turn, and thought I was up front, and ended up having to spend the next 20 hours or so trying to reel people in.
Nice. 100 miles. And so that was 18.
Yeah, and I don't want to forget my spectacular DNF at the Bear Chase when the following month. I shouldn't have run it, but so that was 2018. Three runs I was happy with, and one learning experience.
Hey, you won Bear Chase before 100K, right?
Yeah, a couple years before that.
Nice. And you also, talking about Leadville, you're doing it this year. I think you also started or DNF last year.
2 years ago.
2 years ago.
2 or 3 years ago. Yeah. So that was the first time I'd ever DNF a race. That was 2017, I guess.
Right.
Yeah, it would have been 2017. So, and learned some really valuable lessons about the course and myself, and I'm excited. So this year,
talk about this year.
Well, sure. This has been a great season, just to look forward to, and for me to get excited about. And so far, so good in terms of performance. But I was selected to run in the Badwater 135.
Nice. How do you get selected? Is it through lottery or?
No, it's an invitation. It's similar to like the Barkley. They select only 100 athletes per year.
Nice.
From around the globe, and of that, only 45 are rookies or first timers, and that's the category I fall into.
And what criteria does Badwater follows to invite people, especially for the first time?
Sure, there's a number of requirements you have to have just to apply, and that you have to successfully have completed 3 100-mile races. And then it's essentially lining up your CV or your resume against the other folks coming in, and that's only one component of it. It's certainly the most comprehensive application process I've ever gone through. There's a lot of essay type questions, and I'd like to think it's a fairly holistic 360 degree evaluation of the athlete by the board, of which there are 4 members, and Chris Kostman is the RD, and I would say probably the final arbiter.
So you're going to be wearing all white?
I'm kind of bucking the trends. I wore all black at Salton Sea, just to freak people out.
Are you gonna be wearing shoes that are gonna melt on the road?
No,
Are you gonna be running
I'll be wearing ultra shoes, but they will not melt.
Yeah, Badwater, dude. Like, it's just crazy. But do you apply and then you get the invitation, or does the committee reach out to people?
You apply.
Got it.
And there's a window that the window is open for you to apply. It's like a 2-week period, I believe, and then they do a live announcement on Facebook.
Nice.
So when I was selected for that, I had already in January gotten into Leadville via the lottery.
Lucky.
So those 2 races occur within a month of each other. So in July.
Oh my God.
Yeah, July, middle of July.
Please tell me it's Leadville first.
No, it's Badwater.
Dude. That's just 135 miles. Talk about the numbers of Badwater, the weather, and the distance. It's just insane.
Yeah, I guess I'd like to put in a little context as for why it's means so much to me. Is when I was first exploring the prospect of getting into this profession or getting into this hobby, it's really reading Scott Jurick's book Eat and Run that began to enhance my level of awareness of this outlier community. This this definitely a community that exists on the margins. And the first vignette that Scott shares in chapter 1 is his Badwater experience. And I love the humility and the toughness and confidence that he expressed and weaves in throughout that chapter. Yeah, I remember reading that chapter and putting the book down and thinking to myself in my inner monologue that sounds awful.
Right.
I absolutely have to do that
Yeah.
race.
Yeah, I can. I hear you. Yeah, it's just you just want to go. Like for instance, for me, I haven't run a 100 miler yet, but maybe this year we'll see.
Nice.
But you start hearing about 200 milers and 240 milers, and for some reason, I'm already like, okay, not this year, but hey, 200 milers, the new 100. You know what I'm saying? You start thinking about these kinds of things. I hear you. That book is pretty cool. And I also remember you said that you got inspired to start trail running, I guess, because of the movie Unbreakable, which is that was, I guess, one of the reasons. Such a classic.
Amazing. Amazing.
Do you also like? I assume. I mean, Badwater is something different than running trails. Are you also doing it because you want a different challenge? I think about, for instance, I think Sally McRae is doing it as well. And
she may be. I think she got selected. I didn't see her name on the final roster, but I think she's doing a race in Europe.
I see.
I'm not sure.
Got
but I knew that Sally had put in for it.
Got it. And so Badwater is in July. And then a month later, you're right, August, Leadville 100.
Yeah.
So Leadville, just easy. You start 10,000 feet, go up to 13,000.
Well, that's what I love. Like, I'm all about stories,
Right.
So, it's not interesting to me if it's... Right. It's not interesting to me if it's not a good story. I mean, this running thing that we do is interesting, honestly, mostly to ourselves. And there are different metrics we measure ourselves against.
Yeah.
But the things that rise to my attention that somebody else is doing or someone who compels me to push myself story is usually juxtaposed against this fascinating story. And so I couldn't have scripted this one better in that I got into both Badwater 135 and Leadville in the same calendar year. And in July, I'm going to start a 135-mile race at minus 256 feet below sea level. I'm going to run 135 miles up to the Whitney portals at 8,500 feet above sea level on Mount Whitney. And then I'm going to get up to Hardrock in 4 days and crew for my buddy Jason Schlarb with Meredith Edwards at Hardrock. Then we'll come back home to Estes, and within a month I'm going to run a 100-miler on a course that's literally all above 10,000 feet. So
Wow.
that to me, it's
pretty crazy.
I mean, it might be Pulp Fiction or a dime store novel or some some philosophical study in obsessive compulsive disorder, but to me that's a fun story.
No, it's crazy, especially if it's within a month period.
Right.
So how do you manage the training in that period of time? Like, I assume that you're gonna be in peak shape for Badwater, and then from then till Leadville is gonna be, you're gonna start tapering, maybe. I mean,
so it's a great question. I don't know that I hear that term tapering with a lot of the ultra runners that I run with. We don't necessarily taper. That's a traditional
triathlete thing.
Yeah, marathon, half marathon distance, and there's a lot of science behind that. And there's so I don't generally taper. What I would say, and thank goodness for all the grown-ups that live around me in my world that keep me on the right track. One of which being Travis Macy of Macy Endurance Coaching. He really reins me in on recovery. Like he will shut me down generally about for 2 weeks after Badwater. You know, there will be some active recovery. There are things that I'm doing, but really in order to queue up a good race at Leadville, all of the work's been done. Really, it goes back to November of last year.
Correct.
Is when I started the big push for this season training wise. If I'm smart and I calm down and and don't get out and get too excited after Badwater, we'll see if it works. I mean, that's the secret sauce for Leadville.
Nice. And you are also doing, so you're doing Badwater, but you're also doing what I think is called the Badwater Cup or
The Ultra Cup.
The Ultra Cup. So it's a series of races, and you have done a couple already.
Yes.
So talk more about those two. It's just interesting because so Badwater is like the 135 is all roads, and the one that you did in January, I think the 51 miler is like 30 miles of it. Is it on the beach? Is there
40? That was actually in March. Right?
Got it.
So middle of March, the Badwater Ultra Cup consists of 3 races: the Badwater Cape Fear 51.4 miler on Bald Head Island off of North Carolina in March, the Badwater Salton Sea 81 mile team race in Salton Sea, California. Goes from Salton Sea to Palomar Mountain in San Diego County in the very end of April. It's like 6 weeks after Cape Fear, and then the 135 in July.
Got it. And the one that the Cape Fear 51 miler, you were the first male overall.
First male,
right?
second overall. Yeah.
Wow. It's exciting. Congrats, dude.
Well, I mean, it was amazing to get beat by one of my friends and old training partners and watch her set a course record and just run an absolutely sublime race.
What kind of course is that? I mean, you run a lot on the beach, but so one of the things that was in my mind is Badwater about not like the races are take place on trail on sections, or I guess places that are not trails really. You know, you have pavement, and then you have, I don't know, you run on the beach. I know it's not easy. I'm not saying it's easy.
It's hard. It's the hardest surface I've ever run on.
But do they, like the team relay race that you did, was that on proper trails, or?
That was mostly road, and with about 9 miles of trail.
Got it. So yeah, how was Cape Fear one?
Great. That's the second time I'd run that race. And it's an amazing area and an amazing space out on an island off the coast of North Carolina, as I'd mentioned. No cars. You just got to drive around in golf carts. No hotels. It's all beach houses. And it's this 51.4 mile race where about the first 12 miles are on road and some maritime trail. And then it gets fun. Then you come out around the Cape, and you've got essentially 2 10-mile out, 10-mile back. So 40 miles of beach running. And I want to caveat it with this. Every course is tough in its own way. Every day is tough in its own way. So I don't like getting into which race is tougher. I mean, there's so much subjectivity in that. Running 50 miles is still running 50 miles.
I was exactly going to say that. 50 miler, it's 50 miles is still 50 miles.
And if you're running at a competitive level and you're running hard, it can be a transcendent experience every time. That race really has some hidden fun that you don't expect.
Like what?
When you come around that Cape the first time, and so I got a caveat when with guys. Remember, you always got to use the rule of thirds. So if I tell you it was 30 knot winds, it was probably just 20. But you come around the Cape, you're headed north into a really stout headwind, and it's high tide, so you don't get that nice pack sand. There's a lot of it is at a really, awkward camber in soft sand. then you go out and you come back and you get a tailwind. That's nice.
Yeah.
At the 50K mark, you check in with your team, then you head back out. So there's nothing quite like having salt water slopping over your shoes in a 50-mile race
for hours.
For hours, with the wind in your face. But everyone's on the same course, and it's neat because you get to see the whole field a lot because you're doing out and backs.
Yeah, got it.
So, that's not always great if you're trying to win or to compete because you're always got a target on your back, and you can always see how far away the lead runner is. But it's the second time I've done it, and it is absolutely one of my all-time favorite races.
Nice. So that was in March. And then the one that you did in California in April, what was it again?
That was the Badwater Salton Sea.
Okay.
And that's a great race for anyone getting ready to do the 135 because it's Chris Kosman set it up to basically be your training run. So the profile is very much the same. The first half of the race, or first 41 miles is really hot. It's really exposed. I mean, average temperatures this year were between 90 and 100. And then the second half is when you start doing more climbing.
Got it.
And so there's a 9-mile trail section that was surprisingly technical, with a good amount of vert in a fairly short period, and that's coming off the road after 41 miles. And if you were getting there up around the time I was, it was, still just not much afternoon. It was really hot, and then you get back out on the road. Yeah. And then you get to hammer it downhill relatively for about 20 miles, and then there's 13-mile unrelenting climb at the very end. So it was fantastic. And you'd use the same type of logistics that you use in Badwater with a rolling crew in a vehicle, and just very minimal, a very minimal fixed presence from the staff.
Talk more about the logistics of those kinds of races, because for people who I guess don't know about Badwater, there's no aid stations.
Right.
You have a crew, and they drive a vehicle, and
yes.
How does that work?
Yeah, I was so blessed this year with support from my friend Ellie Fox, who is a local runner. Her and her husband Tyler are from this area originally, and are both very accomplished and exceedingly gifted ultra runners. Ellie has a grandmother. She's got family from down the San Diego area, so she actually flew down from Washington State to meet me there, while Tyler was driving their van back here to Boulder. And essentially they are a floating oasis of your nutrition, your hydration, and gear. And that's another great experience at Badwater Salton Sea. It's really a great learning experience for being in very different climates. It starts off really hot. Most of the day you're super hot and and exposed, which I love. The hot. If people tell me it's going to be tougher, I just take that as a challenge. And so I really enjoyed suffering through that. But by the end, as you go up Palomar Mountain, it's not exceedingly high. I mean, it's still like 5,500 feet. I think the second highest peak in San Diego County. Mm-hmm. You ended up in my UD gear and a CLA knit hat, and it was cool. It got pretty chilly, and that's from a guy who lives at 8,200 feet in Estes Park. Oh. It was brisk.
Yeah.
So Ellie was amazing, and without that kind of support,
right,
the suffer index would have been pegged.
Random question. You were just talking about Estes Park. You used to live in Boulder. When did you move in, and how do you like it?
Sure. We moved in really September. Uh-huh. Ray, she moved up in August. In she's the one that precipitated the move.
Mm-hmm.
So it was during her last year of graduate work at Naropa University, and she was doing her internship at Harmony Foundation, a substance use disorder clinic in Estes, and we moved up there. I followed sometime in September of last year, and we're in love with it. It is amazing.
Yeah.
We've already signed a lease to stay for another year.
Awesome.
And I don't ever want to put the cart before the horse, as it were. I can't imagine us leaving there anytime soon. It is, the quality of life is so amazing.
Yeah.
And for my profession, what I do, there's literally, it's heaven. I mean, it's incredible.
Do you, are the trails there? I haven't run on Estes, I think, before. Are they about the same as boulders, or what would you say?
Yes and no. I mean, from a geological standpoint, it's still the Front Range, although it's at a higher elevation. You're going to have a mix of runnable Forest Service road, dirt road type trails. You're going to have some nice single track stuff, and then you're have some exceedingly complex and technical trail. My backyard consists of Rocky Mountain National Park, and the National Forest.
So pretty.
So trails right outside of our house.
Yeah, it's interesting. You always hear people talk. People who live in Lyons or Estes Park, they love it. It's like it's very common to hear. That people who live there, they love it. Like Lyons, I've heard a lot about.
Sure,
Lyons is cool too.
And it's so there's some thought in all those kind of decisions. Boulder is still just, we didn't want to be too far away from here.
Yeah.
With Rachel's sister Sandy and her partner Sage here, that's our family. I have some family down in Arvada and Lakewood. Being in Estes keeps us relatively close to Denver International Airport. I can get in and out quickly.
I hear you.
And I'm only 45 minutes away from here, and it still keeps me connected at Boulder Running Company a couple of days a week. So, Estes was like being able to go out on the western slope, but still have all the connections and amenities to the Front Range. So it's ended up being perfect.
Agree. I mean, me, we're now living in Fort Collins. We've been there for a little over a year, and the same thing. Like, I always come to Boulder to do interviews like, what we're doing today, and meet people, go to, meetings, network with people. So, I hear you. And like you were saying, it's close to the airport as well.
Right.
Yeah, that's important. So, oh, man. For some reason, I was thinking about wildlife. Have you had any recent encounters with, I don't know, any kind of mountain lions? Or
my cat attacked me this morning on the couch. Does that count? He's very aggressive. we have so much wildlife in our neighborhood.
Oh, dude.
We see the usual suspects, though. The elk, obviously, and that never gets old because it's still remarkable how enormous they are and how symbiotic their relationship is with the community and how present they are. And that it's still a joy to watch tourists come in and have their...
Try to get their selfies too close.
It always reminds me, there was this great... television show back in the 90s called Northern Exposure.
Okay.
But it's essentially, if you ever go and look at that, there's the scene where this doctor goes to Alaska to take up a practice to pay back his student loans, and watching the moose walk down Main Street. That's still the feel I get when I go to Estes. So we see those deer in our backyard all the time. We've got a weasel that lives around our house. We've got all form of bird species that you'd expect: rabbits, bear, and there is a resident mountain lion who lives up a little bit behind our house, and bobcat.
Bobcat, that's crazy. So 2018. So you're training for Badwater, Leadville. Are there any other races after Leadville in the calendar? Are you thinking about?
Yeah, I'm looking at doing so after Leadville, I'm going to take a little bit of time off. And
What?
It just, take time off. I'll still be running, but it'll be just fun exploration stuff. And I'll be working on my series Dig This a lot during that time period. But I'm going to look at going down to Arizona and doing Across the Years in December.
Yeah.
I would like to get a qualifying time for an invitation to Desert Solstice the next year.
Okay.
So
what kind of races are those? Sorry.
24 hours.
Okay.
And again, like many of these races, like Palmer Lake, they have a variety of options, whether it's 6 hours, 12 hours. And I think Across the Years is doing multi-day races now. But 24 hours is still, for me, the challenge. You'd alluded to 200-mile races before and 50-mile races. I still like challenging myself where I can try to continue to improve on speed and duration. Yeah. So I'll move on once I've cracked the code.
Once you feel good about
where I'm at with what I'm doing.
Got it. No, that makes sense. I was listening a podcast. I think Rich Roll was interviewing Katra Corbett.
Yes.
And she talks about Candace, who's the ultra runner who puts together this long distance 200 plus mile races. I think she said that she's working on a 500 mile.
Sure. In that Triple Crown, I think it's there's 3 races,
and one is 240, right?
Moab's the 240 and the Tahoe, and it's an exceptional performance in terms of the administration and planning and logistics that go into doing those, and it's a tip of the hat to Candace with what she's done, and a big fan of hers.
Yeah.
When that may be a different chapter for me, it may be there's been a number of seasons in my life. I don't ever feel comfortable forecasting what the next one is. But right now I'm having a hell of a lot of time at the 50-mile and 100-mile distance. So
let me ask you something. What would you say you've learned, things that you have, new things that you're doing this year that you didn't do last year or previous years, like nutrition-wise? And
sure.
I see you on social media. You always work on conditioning, and what are the things that you are doing now that you didn't do before that has helped you to take it to the next level, improve your running and your performance?
It's a great question, and honestly, I held myself accountable. All of the ancillary work that I do is so critical to a holistic approach to training and performing at a high level in this sport. None of that is profound or seminal. Everyone is at least topically familiar with why you should do strength training or why nutrition's important. When I moved to Estes, I made a commitment to see just how good I could get by doing all of the little things consistently. If I had to break it down into like a couple of buckets, nutrition has been hugely important. I mean, I've been a plant-based athlete for quite some time. Moving to Estes allowed Ray and I to be very simple in our life. There are plenty of amenities up there. We spend a lot of time, cooking our own, preparing our own foods. I'm a total rock star. I'm usually asleep at 9 p.m. every night.
Yep.
I get up early. So rest, food, again, self-evident, nothing groundbreaking there. Just doing it, right? It's just doing it. And so there's that. And then strength training by having the amazing Aaron Carson, who trains. Legend. Yeah, just trains so many world-class athletes, and 1 to 2 times a week I'm always there for foundations training with her. Then the tissue work with Rolfing through Levity Rolfing, and chiropractic work with Dr. Wolf. Those things, there's no new algorithm that I figured out. I just figured out for me how to get disciplined and not make excuses and do the work every day. That was the secret for me this year.
Nice. Interesting that you said that now that you live in Estes, you've been able to focus more on your nutrition and other things. I wonder if less distractions, I mean, smaller town.
Yeah, it is. It is, yeah.
Oh.
I mean, we live on the side of a mountain
Right.
at 8,200 feet. I used to live in North Boulder, where everything was in walking distance.
Yep. Totally.
And I love it.
Yeah.
And there's an excitement in living in that kind of community. But as trying to be a competitive endurance athlete, there's something in a kind of Spartan or monastic lifestyle in terms of keeping you focused.
It's funny. You just reminded me of. So I'm a big fan of a Canadian triathlete called Peter Reed. So he won the Hawaiian Ironman 3 times. So he's very well respected.
He's legit.
Yeah. And he said that one of the things that he would do, he would create his own training camps where he would go to Hawaii, I think Kona, where the race takes place, and he would just seclude himself in some kind of he'd just rent a house or a cabin, and with no those are the early 90s, I think, so no social media or anything like that, but he would not have any kind of distractions, and he would just spend 2-3 weeks training hard there, and not being connected to other society, and just being by himself made him not only push himself physically but also just be able to focus. And he had all kinds of crazy stuff. Like he would always, so when you finish the bike, you start running, right?
Right.
So he would finish the bike ride. He would eat a big dish of plate of nachos. He would make himself sick on purpose, so he would use that to deal and try to deal with it during his run. So
that's
he
amazing.
could try to.
That's amazing.
Well, that's a crazy thing, but anyway, you reminded me of like this idea of being a monk or whatever you call it.
I'd gone back and I've reread this book several times now. Speaking of elite triathletes, there's a Matt Fitzgerald book called Iron War.
Oh yeah,
and
dude.
It's study
1989, baby.
Yeah, the study of Dave Scott and Mark Allen, and I like to look at myself as maybe an amalgam in terms of a mindset of Mark Allen's more spiritual New Age approach to training, and Dave Scott's very old school traditional approach. I think it mirrors a lot of the chapters in my life where I grew up in a very traditional New England environment. I spent 24 years in the Army, which can be argued effectively as a very traditional, more of a hard line vocation. And, then I've spent the last, close to a decade now in really progressive mountain towns, which I love. And I think whatever extrinsic motivation you can identify with, whether it's Peter Reed or Dave Scott or Mark Allen, it's good, because if those are the stories you need to tell yourself when you're, in those tough training periods, looking for or anticipating the gains that you're going to get, because they're not easy to get through those segments.
It's really cool when you find people that you can learn from. It reminds me of this idea of surround yourself with people that you want to become or that you want to learn from. And sometimes you think, well, I cannot be physically close to that person, but that doesn't mean necessarily you need to be close. You can just always buy books or find videos on YouTube. I do that all the time.
Of
so,
course.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's absolutely. I always look to people that I aspire to replicate in terms of performance. There are so many athletes that I admire for one reason or another that it expands well beyond just endurance athletics, and I think that's something that's really important. You should try to you should really try to achieve your best by viewing the world through the lens of people that you'd like to emulate, and I think I think that's healthy.
No. Now you were talking about all these athletes that you admire. You recently started a new series of videos or documentary called Dig This.
Yes.
Can never say it. Say it. Say it.
Dig this.
Okay, dig this, man. This is my Spanish. Mi español. Dig this. There you go. All right. Why don't you talk more about that?
Sure. Yeah.
It's cool.
This is just kind of this out of left field concept where I wanted to create something quick and punchy that captured people's attention, that shared the experience of living in Colorado in special places as told through friends of mine who are other mountain athletes.
Mm-hmm.
You know, in short, if you could create 10 minutes of content roughly every month or so that highlighted a really magical place in Colorado on the Front Range and on the Western Slope that is a space that resonates deeply with a highly accomplished athlete who becomes that kind of connective tissue, that storyteller. Because I found that there's a lot of content on athletes that's very specific to the person, and that's great. That's all well and good. We all have a story to share. Everyone does. And then there's a lot of, the epic sweeping vista video footage of these incredible places.
Right.
But I hadn't seen anything where there had been kind of a symbiotic storytelling from that space through an athlete. And then the third part of that was I just like hanging out with my friends, so if I can make an excuse to go, run with, we run with Darcy PQ and Courtney DeWalter and Sage and Sandy. And we've got a bunch of other great ones coming up. I'm hanging out with my friends in the woods taking pictures. I mean, how awful is that? So that's pretty much it.
Nice. Yeah, and we'll put the links on your YouTube channel. Yeah, I saw the Darcy PQ video, and it's so
Courtney's
much
is
fun.
coming out soon.
And where did you run with Darcy on that video? Green Mountain?
We did Green. Yeah.
Nice.
That was super fun.
Nice. So just a couple of questions that before we wrap up this conversation. So you are an expert, you're not only all things trail running and ultra running, but you're an expert on helping people to find the right trail shoe. So for people who, let's say, are starting to run on trails and there's, they haven't found the right shoe for them, and it can be tricky, to think about what is the right shoe for me, because a lot of things, right? Sometimes your friend tells you should buy this brand because I love it. You should buy this particular shoe because the color is great. You know what I'm saying? Like, sure. There are all kinds of different things that sometimes we think about as criteria to choose the right shoe. But what would you recommend to people, especially somebody who doesn't know what kind of shoe to look for, especially for people who are starting?
Sure. First thing is to understand that any advice you get from someone not doing the fitting is well intentioned, although it's probably not super helpful.
Right.
I feel the same way when I see reviews and read reviews, or you see them online. Again, it's all well-meaning, but unless they're running in your foot with your biomechanics, right, then it's simply an observation that's germane to them, but certainly may not be applicable to you. You see this a lot with couples or friends. Someone will come into Boulder Running Company and they're like, well, my husband said this is the best. And I'm like, well, that's great if he's running with if you're running with his feet, right, I'll put you in those. But or vice versa, she told me this is the best shoe on the planet. Again, it's all well-meaning stuff.
Or you go to Ross and you find a good deal, or not
right,
Nordstrom.
Right, yeah. With my meager exposure to the retail side of the house, I've found that discovery learning in price point shopping for endurance shoes generally does not work to the benefit of the user. Yeah, I would find I would find a good quality specialty run store in your community or nearby. Go and spend some time, enough time to spend with someone who's done this a few times.
Right.
And, they're generally going to steer you in the right direction. It's honestly one of the most enjoyable experiences I have is sharing that gift of trail running with someone who has had a poor shoe experience before.
Exactly.
Right? I love spending the time sitting down and listening to what they need and then proposing a couple different courses of action and letting them discover the right fit for themselves.
Nice. Yeah, I agree. Now, trail running shoes, is there a shoe? So let's talk about what trail running shoes, you're really digging lately.
Sure.
Let's talk about the shoes that you wear now. You were sponsored by Ultra. So let's first talk about Ultra, and then another one that's not, a different one than Ultra that you find interesting.
Well, yeah, I want to be clear. I'm actually not an Ultra athlete. They take good care of me.
Okay.
And I have some great relationships with the company. I signed on with a team called the Adrenaline Project this year, and we can run in whatever shoe that we want. I had run for Innovate for several years, and last year, while I was out at Run Rabbit Run, crewing for Jason Schlarb and Meredith Edwards, I really a couple of things were happening simultaneously. I was dealing with some injuries that had come out of Kodiak 100, and I was exposed to the Ultra family of athletes during that weekend, and things happen at the right time for the right reasons. I believe. I'm not a Calvinist. I don't believe in divine fate or destiny, but I believe if you surround yourself with good people and good energy, and you've got a good heart, generally good things will happen. And the transition to running an Ultra just happened organically. And I am really grateful to the company for the support they've provided me. And their athletes, their athletes on the red team, the elite team, are just not only amazing runners, there's amazing people. And I'm going to tell you, you can't say that about every sponsored athlete out there. You can't. I mean, but the folks that I'm exposed to at Ultra are just extraordinary. So for me, this year, with a lot of the Badwater stuff, my daily trainer is the Torin 3.5.
Okay.
My race shoe is the Duo, and my
Ultra Duo.
Yeah.
I've never heard of it.
So it's amazing shoe. And then my favorite trail shoe is the Timp 1.5.
Dude, I want to buy a pair of Timps because
oh my gosh, game changer, man.
I have wide feet, and I've been wearing a pair of New Balances, the King of the Mountain, and because I've been wearing all New Balance, and I tried the new Timps a couple months ago, and they feel really good. So you like them, dig them?
It's amazing, and that's not hyperbole. It's for me. Again, I'm more of a distance guy.
Yeah.
So compared to the Lone Peak 4, which is a fine platform, amazing. It's got 2 additional millimeters of midsole stack, so a little more cush.
Yeah.
It doesn't have the rock plate in it, and it has a gusseted tongue. It just fits my foot perfectly, and that's what I ran. In those anytime I'm doing trail stuff that's not, it's somewhat technical.
Not exactly. So I think Timps are for a surface that is technical, but not the most technical. Would you say?
Yeah, I mean, right. So I don't know if I look at it and looking at the outsoles and the aggressiveness of the lugs. The 3 trail shoes from Ultra that I'm most exposed to and have the most comfort level with is Superior, the Lone Peak, and the Timp. For me, it's all 3 of those are going to work on the gnarliest stuff we have out here. but because of the distance that I'm doing,
Right.
I mean, you were generating 3 to 4 times our body weight with every downward foot strike. That kind of punishment, I just need the extra push in
Totally.
the midsole. So, yeah, been a game changer. So,
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah,
I hope
agree.
to keep it rolling, but I've had a great season so far to start, and it's in no small part because of everyone who's kind enough to support me. But the shoe change has been amazing.
Yeah, I'm really curious about the tips because you are right that the cushioning it seems to work well for the distance. Like I want to do a 50 miler, and even if I decide to do a 100 miler, because the superior, it's just I need more cushion, and I
Yeah.
don't know if I'll go all the way up to the Olympus. That's like it's the most cushion, for
Sure.
the bigger shoe. So, but dude, this has been great. Thank you for stopping by.
Oh, it's always good to see you, dude. It's always good to see you, man.
It's so much fun, dude.
Yeah.
Now with fancier equipment, I guess. then-
This is amazing. No, Todd and I were talking about your gear while we're shooting Dig This. You know me. I love DIY. I love grassroots efforts that and watching you grow from the. I think we had
We had
labs.
we had lavalier microphone.
But it was like it was really tight. Like we were like filming into the sun, and I think those journeys are the best. Like none of us
Totally.
should ever take ourselves
No.
too seriously, right?
No, of
and
course.
that's what I love is watching how your brand has grown, how you've evolved
Thank you.
to the gear. To come into our space here
this
with our
place.
friend Kate King.
Which, by the way, we right now we are recording this episode at a store called Go Far. So for people who are not from Boulder, it's a new running store. It's awesome. Has this very local vibe type of feel. Has a coffee shop, yeah, it's fun. But
I've got to stare at a 8-foot tall
Oh,
Rob
man.
Crar
Yeah, we
on a
need a-
smart wool
let me do
pussy. this
we're getting
is
to
how
hang
I'm-
out with Rob Crar here. There you go.
He's not much of a talker, as you can tell, but he's a super good dude.
And finally, for people, where can people find you online or on social media platforms?
Right. So Instagram, Tumbleweed Ultra.
El Hombre Lobo.
El Hombre Lobo, that's the werewolf. And then on Facebook, Joshua Stevens. And if you go to my Instagram in the bio, you'll find a link to our YouTube channel, which is,
Nice.
fun
And-
project.
Yeah, for sure. We will share that as well. But thanks, man.
Hey, support this guy. This guy is amazing. He's part of the community and has
Appreciate
been
it, dude.
one of my best friends since I've been here.
Thanks, man.
All right.
Chesky up.
All right.